And I think it would be really nice to have a Sweden so that we have another counter for Muscovy. I'm a little bit worried that Muscovy doesn't have enough counters in the region. I mean, I had the same problem with the Mamluks, Karakanulu, and the Ottomans, but these three have reasons to fight each other. So I'm definitely going to have to make Sweden as like the counter to Muscovy and Muscovy the counter to Sweden. What were the others? Who are we on? We just covered Genoa. Right, Hamburg. So Hamburg's entire goal is to become the Hanseatic League. Players were given a choice of playing either Lübeck or Hamburg. They are both viable as the Hansa leader. Their goal is that Lübeck or the English Channel, they do have a choice, must be the highest value trade node in the world. So whereas Genoa and Venice are just fighting against each other, their goal is simply to become the richest trade node in the world. It would be easier to do as English Channel because Lübeck actually feeds into England, but I'm also aware that their home trade node is Lübeck, so I gave them the choice. Either of them can be the highest value trade node in the world. They must own Novgorod, so the fact that Muscovy has already grabbed Novgorod before Hamburg had a chance to do so is going to make their job all the more difficult, but their goal is to take Novgorod, although I may change that to Never or Ingermanland. Because historically Novgorod was a really big trade centre for the Hansa. They basically sailed through Ladoga, then down the river, and Novgorod became a big trade centre. I might need to tweak that one slightly. I'll add a note. They must own Riga and Gotland. So again, big trade cities or big trade regions in the Hanseatic League. Riga and Gotland here, both of which must be owned by Hamburg, or I might say as trade cities. Or subjects. Because he's a trade league, so he is going to be limited in how many territories he can have. Because he has to be a trade league. Because... actually... yeah, he does. He has to have a trade income of 1,000 a month. So he has to earn trade income of 1,000 ducats a month. It's doable. It's difficult, but it's definitely doable. One of my objectives as the Netherlands in my Netherlands game was to have a income of 10,000 a month. And a very large portion was from trade. And then he must also own Sjælland. So as I mentioned earlier, for the Danish goals, there is a huge conflict between the Hansa and the Danish power. The Prince of Denmark was a massive, massive thorn in the side of the Hansa. So he must own Sjælland and basically go, Denmark, you're done. Because Denmark has a thing called the Sound Toll, where he basically controls all transport through this part of the Øresund. And if he can take Sjælland, then he can basically break that blockade. So those are the Danish ones. Holland. Holland must form the Netherlands. The Netherlands is the only formable tag which still exists in the game as a objective, because it's going to be difficult, especially with a player Burgundy and with a Castile who wants to take over the entirety of the Netherlands, or the Low Countries. So I think that formidable tag is going to be very, very difficult to achieve, so therefore it is still a goal and the only formidable goal that we still have. Have at least 70% of the trade power in the English Channel. So this is going to launch a massive trade war between Burgundy, the Netherlands, and Britain, and possibly France, if they try to get active in the English Channel, though I don't think it's going to be particularly in their best interests. Still waiting for a lot of players to load. It's taking a while. So yeah, they need to get 70% of the trade in the English trade channel, which is doable. They need to own the North and South Lanka area in India. Those are the coastal regions of Sri Lanka. So Sri Lanka comprised of 2 areas, possibly 3 areas, but they need to take the North Lanka and South Lanka of Sri Lanka. They need to have the largest fleet in the world. So whereas England must just have 1,000 ships, Holland needs to have the biggest fleet in the world. So if England does achieve their 1,000 ships, then their job is going to get a lot more difficult. But if they can just, sink the English fleet, maybe at Chatham, sailing up the Thames, then they get that objective.
Hey, Maud.
Hello.
You've got spectator vision, right?
Yes.
So can you chuck on the Imperial map mode up the top, hit T, and then look at the province next to Perm?
Oh, it's because it's uncolonized. Yeah, it's uncolonized.
Oh, okay. I can only see, the edges of it because it's incognito.
Oh
And
yeah, Perm has actually become emperor. No, it's anything which is uncolonized is empire.
All right.
You don't need to panic. You've achieved your goal.
No, Muscovy is just like, oh, the Emperor's back. Like, what the fuck?
That would have been pretty
say?
funny. Yes, you have to take down the Russian Imperial. The Russian HRE.
Gotta humiliate them. Oh yeah.
I'm so annoyed with you. I'm going to have to rewrite a whole bunch of people's goals now. 'Cause it's
I
not fair
know.
that three of
I
them
told
knocked
you
out.
a week or two ago, hey, what happens if I dismantle the Empire?
I did not think it was possible that early. I didn't realize about the alliances. I thought it had to be.
Poland can do it
nations.
faster.
Really?
Poland can do it faster. Yeah, at the start of the game, they can ally every single elector, and then they can just declare on Austria.
Fair enough.
Yeah. That's why I asked at the start of the game, define gamey.
It's pushing the limits, but I'll allow it just because that is kind of a clever play, and it was one of your goals, was to disable or dismantle the Empire. But I'm not actually annoyed the Empire's gone. I'm annoyed that there's not going to be a League War, because the League War was going to be fantastic. It was going to be glorious.
Yeah, cool.
But oh well. You've gone all robot. Still robot. Yeah, Discord's screwing up. So I'm just going to continue talking about what Holland is trying to achieve. So they need to, and this is one of my favourite goals, own Manhattan and have it be 40 development. So they can own it or it can be a colonial nation. That one doesn't really matter. I should probably actually specify. Or colonial. So yes, Manhattan, also known as New Amsterdam, must be a colonial. Must be 40 development, and they need to own it. Okay, so that is Holland done. We have Hungary, which unfortunately is not here today, but hopefully we will see Hungary again in the future. He must have 100 mercenaries. Hungary is famous for the Black Army, which was one of the largest, if not the largest, mercenary army in Europe. This can, however, be temporarily lost if you go below 100 mercenaries. So not only does he have to have 100 mercenaries, he must maintain 100 mercenaries. And that is going to be expensive. But there are a couple of things which Hungary can do to make that more attainable. Primarily, Hont must have at least 30 base production. Hont is this province right here, and it is one of the very few provinces in Europe, which we can tell is a gold mine. And their objective is to make it the biggest gold mine in the world. Now, I do realise that comes with a risk. Going over 10 production for gold has a serious risk of going and getting depleted. That's just a risk he's going to have to take if he wants to get that goal achieved. The Ottomans must not own any land in the Balkans or Crimea, so the fact that the Ottomans are currently going after Bosnia and Serbia, in fact, White Peace. Really? Really? I guess he just took territory rather than taking them all out. I'm surprised they took as little. Maybe they have an agreement with Venice, because Venice is currently... No, Ragusa is currently going after them. I'm surprised that those two still exist. But yeah, the Ottomans need to take... Damn it, I lost my train of thought. Hungary needs to kick the Ottomans out of this area. Balkans and Carpathia. So it is the whole of Europe if effectively they need to kick the Ottomans out of. Which is very similar to what Austria is trying to achieve. They need to own 6 coal-bearing... They need to own 6 coal-bearing provinces. There's actually quite a few potential coal provinces in and around Hungary. They need to have 6 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Unfortunately, a bunch of them are owned by the likes of Poland and Bohemia, so they will need to pick fights with some of their neighbours in order to get those 6 coal-bearing provinces. However, they don't actually need to have coal at the time. They just need to be coal potential rather than necessarily coal. And then finally, to become a great power. If they become one of the top 8 nations in the world, then they achieve that goal. Too bad the Hungary Black Army idea doesn't help with mercs. Yeah, I was a little surprised that it doesn't. So if we take a look at the Hungarian ideas at the moment, the Black Army is this one, Found the Black Army. +5 discipline. I mean, it's going to make their armies better. That combined with the recover land morale and also cavalry combat ability +20 puts them on par with the Polish cavalry. Well, not on par, but slightly lower. But still pretty good. Means they're going to have a really good standing army. It's just not going to be as good as it could have been. Right. Yeah, Hungary is allied to the Teutons, so they cannot take any territories from Hungary. Hungary is a protected nation, but because it's a defensive partner, it's still got called by the AI. He can fight. Who is it that's take the Teutons? Poland. Poland's going after the Livonians, while Brandenburg is going after the Teutons. So Poland's basically trying to add this real estate to Lithuania before Muscovy can grab it. Fair enough. And another hot join. Who's this? Naples. Why is Naples always join late? This is not the first time that this has happened this session. So, Hungary needs a better economy than everyone else to do that for the mercenaries. Not necessarily true. You can get a lot of ideas, which reduces mercenary maintenance costs, and also increases the number of mercenaries you can have available, which also decreases their costs. So as long, basically, as you go administrative, and I think it's plutocratic? Maybe quantity? And there are some policies as well. Like, it's possible to make mercenaries really quite cheap and quite numerous. The difficulty that Hungary is going to have, I think, is actually going to be the force limits. Because your force limits need to be high enough that you can actually recruit 100 mercenaries. It's doable, but it's difficult. Hence, it's a goal. Kaiser Wilhelm of Burgundy is offering to sell territories in order to pay his loans off. That doesn't seem like a particularly good idea. Surely you should just try and get an agreement with somebody who doesn't like France to get them to subsidize you. That would be a much better way of getting rid of subsidies. Loans. Not a squirrel, thank you very much for the follow. Welcome to the channel. Admin, plutocratic idea, policy and admin, diplo and equality and espionage. So yeah, there are a lot of ideas that reduce mercenary costs. Was Wallachia an option for players? No, it wasn't. The smallest nations that I allowed were the Germanic miners because of the HRE. So of course they've disbanded the HRE already. Which is going to make the lives of Trier and Cologne a lot more difficult. Okay, Naples is back. And we should be good to go again. Here we go. Okay. You know what we were doing before? We were looking at everyone's alliances and we kind of got sidetracked. So how far did we get? I think we didn't actually get very far. I think we got to like France and then the war broke out. So France is still allied with England, Denmark and the Ottomans. And Venice. And Florence. Florence has actually grown quite nicely. Well done, Val. Then we have got the Papal States, who are currently allied to Genoa and Trier. That's a bit of a small alliance there. I was kind of hoping that the Pope would be one of like the real diplomatic players, because they have a lot of objectives which actually kind of overlap with other players in a positive way. Like if the other player achieves it, then the Pope also achieves it. So I'm hoping to see a bit more of a diplomatic game from the Pope in the future, particularly when the Reformation breaks out. They're going to be like one of the real bastions for Catholicism. I mean, obviously it's the Pope. Then we've got Muscovy, Over here, currently allied only with nobody. Muscovy stands alone, playing the ultimate isolationist. Their only friends being their vassals, who are forced to be their friends. Brandenburg, allied only with Poland. Antria. Bohemia... Oh no, they're allied in a war together with Bohemia against these guys. So Poland and Bohemia are still sticking with them. I do wonder if... Does Bohemia have any reason to go after Prussia? Not anymore. No, I think Bohemia and Prussia may well... Bohemia and Brandenburg might well be long-term friends here because they both want to see the Reformation succeed. So I'm not that surprised by this. Poland is allied to Bohemia and Brandenburg and Denmark. And then they, of course, have Lithuania as a personal union under them. So this is kind of the anti-Muscovy alliance. And then Poland, I think, also has a real vested interest in keeping Germany at bay. So having two German allies to basically help him control the Germanics would be good. Why don't I allow smaller European countries? Because they spend too long consolidating. They don't really impact the wider diplomatic game. Like, for example, I haven't spent much time talking about Trier and Cologne because I don't think they're going to have much of an impact at this point. The only one who might would be Florence, and that's just because I really rate Val as a diplomatic player. I mean, I admit I don't know as much about the Cologne and Trier players to really comment on that, but because they're so much smaller than, say, France just has the potential to do more. Why would Britannia ally the evil French? I suspect it's ensuring status quo. France needs allies. They probably offered something to England, and England wants to stop anyone in Europe growing too big. That's always been England's stated diplomatic goal in Europe, and France is a fairly good tool to do that with, because France has similar objectives, and England and France both have real reasons to be after the Iberians. There's going to be a lot of overlapping colonial stuff between these guys. And the Danes, to be fair. Alright, where are we up to? Genoa. Genoa is allied with the Pope and Naples. So we're definitely seeing a bit of an Italian coalition going on here. In fact, the alliance with the Pope just broke. So just Naples. Genoa, again, a little bit shaky here. I would kind of hope to see them getting a couple more allies. I mean, Genoa is one of those friends that everyone should want to have because they're going to be fantastically wealthy and they can be a real money bags in the same way that Venice is. And I think that Venice has played the diplomatic game a bit better, although actually the only friend that Venice has is Florence, with whom they're in a war, and France. So both of the two merchant republics here not doing a huge amount diplomatically. But then again, neither's Hamburg. Maybe the other players are just not realizing how ridiculously wealthy these guys can get. Or maybe money is just not worth that much yet, because early in the game, trade isn't very powerful. Trade is not very good until Diplotech 9, when you can get caravels. Once caravels come into play, then light ships really start to add a lot of value in terms of trade protection, trade power, and then you can really start to move trade around the map. But at this point of the game, it's not very strong. So the early game for the mercantile nations is going to be difficult, but they're going to be real powerhouses later on as they start to subsidize the other bigger players and start basically using money as an economic tool, which is one of my favorite things to do in EU4 and a thing that this game models extremely well. Ottomans. So at the moment, Helsin is allied with Karakanulu, which is one of the protected nations, and then France. And I feel like this is an agreement that they came up with in the past. That's not just Helsin abusing the AI. Currently going after Karaman and Akanulu, so going after Ak rather than Kara. Then we have got Denmark, allied to Poland, no longer allied to Scotland. Scotland having... No longer allied to England. The Danish-English alliance is over. I guess Denmark was more worried about Scotland going after their islands than they were about going after their goal in England. But that alliance does seem to have broken down now, no longer in effect. England now only allied with the French. England's looking a little bit isolated themselves, although they have a navy, and so long as they can maintain that navy, they can maintain their strength. Holland. Holland, the independent Holland, is allied to Limburg. Oh no, and Munster. And they have actually expanded a little bit. They've taken Utrecht, they've taken Overstricht. So they've taken out Utrecht, basically. They are currently in a war against Friesland. So Holland is starting to balloon out a little bit. Basically doing the stuff that Burgundy is not really in a position to do anymore. Burgundy definitely having lost a lot of their power. In fact, Burgundy, do you have any subjects left? Yeah, Nevers, Flanders and Brabant. Flanders and Brabant are actually really strong subjects, and if they were in a position to annex them, that would be really good for them. Unfortunately, their massively negative prestige and small size is making these extremely likely to rebel, and if anyone else wanted to see the downfall of Burgundy, you can just support the independence of Flanders and Brabant, and that's basically Burgundy finished. Portugal, who are your allies? The Portuguese allies at the moment, the Iberian Hugbox remains strong. The Iberian coalition, shouldn't really call them Hugbox, not yet anyway. Castile and Aragon still in that tight-knit alliance. And really, I think this is like a mutual defense pact. I don't know how much they're going to be doing together in like offensive wars, but defensive wars, absolutely they shall. What are the protected nations in this context? Players who haven't shown up. Yes, basically. So if you're absent for 1 week, then your nation is protected, and what that basically means is other players may not declare war on you. It is asked that all players set their AI settings, and in fact I think I might go through every single voice chat in a second and just say set up your AI settings now. But basically, you can't declare war on a protected nation, and if you are fighting a protected nation because they are in a defensive war against somebody else that you're fighting, you cannot take anything from them. You just have to white piece them out as soon as possible.